Okay, so today we're talking about a strip of water that's so important it's literally been called the jugular vein of the global economy. It's this one spot on the map where everything, geopolitics, energy, the constant risk of conflict, it all comes together. We're going to break down why this one narrow waterway is probably the most critical choke point on Earth. This is the Strait of Hormuz.
Just think about this number for a second. 21 miles. That's it. At its narrowest point, the world's most important energy artery is just 21 miles wide. I mean, that's shorter than a marathon. And yet, through this tiny little passage flows a staggering amount of the world's energy. It's a perfect and kind of scary example of how something so small can have such a massive global impact.
And you can really see the scale of its importance right here. Just look at the numbers. In 2023, we're talking about nearly 21 million barrels of oil and petroleum products moving through the strait every single day. Now compare that to the other famous canals. That's more than double what the Suez Canal handles. And the Panama Canal, it's not even in the same league. Hormuz handles over 10 times as much. When it comes to oil, nothing else comes close.
So let's put that in a global perspective. A full quarter of all the oil transported by sea anywhere in the world goes through this one spot. And on top of that, a fifth of all liquefied natural gas, the stuff they super cool to ship around the planet, also has to pass through. So what that really means is any disruption here, any problem, isn't just a regional headache. It's an immediate, full-blown threat to the global economy.
Now, whenever you have a place that's this vital to the world's economy, it's no surprise that it becomes a magnet for conflict. The history of the Strait is basically just littered with confrontations, and every single one of them is a reminder of just how fragile the whole situation really is.
And yeah, this tension is nothing new. It has a long and really volatile history. You can go all the way back to the tanker war in the 1980s, which got so heated the U.S. military got directly involved, and which led to the tragic accidental downing of a civilian airliner in 1988. Then, you flash forward to our time, and the pattern just keeps repeating. The U.S. leaves the Iran nuclear deal in 2018, and what happens? 2019 sees a whole new wave of attacks and seizures of oil tankers. Then in 2020, after the U.S. drone strike kills General Soleimani, everyone was holding their breath, waiting for a major retaliation in the Strait. The takeaway is pretty clear. This is not and has not been a peaceful waterway.
So to really understand the stakes today, the source material we're looking at lays out this chilling, hypothetical crisis scenario. Now, this isn't a prediction, okay? It's more of a thought exercise, designed to show just how quickly and how catastrophically things could spiral out of control.
And this quote right here from an Iranian official, it really captures the strategic thinking perfectly. For Iran, the Strait is its ultimate trump card. If they're being squeezed by sanctions or military pressure, they can threaten to shut down the Strait and basically hold the world's energy supply hostage. It is their most powerful point of leverage, bar none.
And when you actually look at the map, it becomes so obvious how tense this geography is. You've got major U.S. and allied naval bases on one side, and right across this narrow strip of water, you have significant Iranian military bases. We're talking about two adversaries, armed to the teeth, operating literally within striking distance of each other, right on top of this critical choke point. The potential for a mistake, for a miscalculation, is just enormous.
So here's how the scenario plays out. It starts with a huge trigger, the assassination of Iran's supreme leader. Iran's response is swift and dramatic. The Revolutionary Guard declares the strait closed to all traffic, full stop. The effect is almost instant. Within just a few days, tanker traffic collapses by more than 90%. And the impact? A global oil disruption 3 times bigger than the infamous 1973 oil crisis. It would send shockwaves through every corner of the global economy. Okay, so this brings us to the really fundamental question that kind of fuels all this tension. Who actually gets to control who passes through these waters? And, well, the answer is legally and politically very complicated. So, the key idea you have to understand is something called territorial waters. International law lets a country claim the sea up to 12 nautical miles from its coast as its own sovereign territory. But here's the catch with the Strait of Hormuz. It's so narrow that the entire thing falls within the combined territorial waters of Iran and Oman. There's no lane of international high seas running down the middle.
And that is the core of the whole dispute. On one hand, Iran says, hey, this is our water, so foreign warships need our permission to pass through. On the other hand, the U.S. and most of the world point to international law, which guarantees a right of transit passage for all ships through straits like this. So what you end up with are two sides operating under two completely different sets of rules in the same very narrow, very tense body of water.
So you might be thinking, okay, this is a complicated military standoff on the other side of the world. Why does it matter to me? Well, it matters because the global stakes are incredibly high, with real, tangible consequences for basically everyone.
So let's talk about what would happen if the strait were actually closed. First, oil prices would likely skyrocket past $150 a barrel. Natural gas prices could jump by 50%. But it's not just about energy. Almost a third of the world's fertilizer exports go through here. Shut that down and you have a global food security crisis on your hands. Major economies like China, Japan, and India would face devastating energy shortages. Global supply chains would just be thrown into chaos.
So what about just going around it? Well, there are a few pipelines that do bypass the strait, but honestly, their capacity is a drop in the ocean. They can carry maybe 3 million barrels of oil a day combined. That is a tiny fraction of the 21 million barrels that flow through Hormuz every day. The simple, hard reality is this: there is no viable alternative.
And this all brings us back to the central dilemma. For decades, the entire world has relied on this one, fragile, 21-mile passage, just hoping that stability holds. But as the tensions keep rising, the risk of a catastrophic disruption just gets bigger and bigger. So it leaves all of us with a critical and pretty uncomfortable question. With so much of our modern world balanced on this razor-thin knife's edge, what's the alternative?